Pretty cool. And so when Tsar Nicholas I, he was going to come and visit Svetitskhoveli, they ran and then quickly painted everything over in white so that he wouldn't be offended by the painted cathedral. But then he was like, no, I don't really want to visit. I got other things to do, and that's that. So later, afterwards, they've tried some restoration to remove them. Hello, we're back. I'm Sean Basie with a Facetious Guide, and today we're going to talk about a little trip that I made last week to a place called Mtskheta, which is, if you have taken my tours in Brussels, you'll know how terrible I am with pronunciations. That carries over. I mean, it's also true with the Georgian language pronunciations. On the whole, Georgian is a little bit easier to pronounce than French because like all the words are spelled how they sound. But a lot of those letters just don't exist in English, or they are very hard to put together, like a m, t, ch sound, and you gotta mash that all together. It's just Mtskheta. I think that's okay, right? Mtskheta. If you're Georgian, you might correct me down in the comments. Say like, no, you're saying it wrong. Mtskheta. Of course, you can't record yourself in the comments. Oh well. So you can't really correct me if I'm saying it wrong, but yeah, good luck. Anyway, so we took the trip to Mtskheta. Now, if you're new to Georgia, or you come to Georgia the first time and you meet a Georgian, almost 100% of the time, they will take you on what I like to call the Trinity of holy sites in near Tbilisi. It's like the easiest cultural trip you can take a guest to. So Georgians almost always take their guests here. They also have lots of weddings and other feasts in Mtskheta because that's the thing to do, get married in Mtskheta. It's like rivals. They also have another city in Kakheti called the City of Love, Signagi. Sometimes they do weddings over there, sometimes in Mtskheta, and sometimes just around town. Whatever. Weddings everywhere. Weddings for everyone. It's nice. Very, very romantic country, I guess. So, okay, so the Trinity of holy sites that Georgians take their guests on in Mtskheta is Jvari Monastery, Svetitskhoveli Cathedral, and Salobie, which I'll get to all of those in maybe that order. Yeah, let's do that order. Okay, so Svetitskhoveli, it literally means what does it mean? It means life-giving pillar. That's what it means. Life-giving pillar. And the reason for that is we have to rewind about like 2,000 years. Okay, and maybe even further. Because like Mtskheta itself is like a really, really old city. It's arguably from the 500 BC to the 2000 BC. We don't really know. We have like different theories of it. The Georgians would prefer it's from 2000 BC. It's like one of the longest continuously occupied cities in the world. By occupied, I mean lived in, not the Russian way. They named the city according to them. It was the father of the Georgian people who settled the city. A guy named Kartlos. So he's the father of the Kartlian people. So there you go. Other historians argue with that version, and they say it was settled around 500 by the Meskhetian Turks, and hence the name Mtskheta or Mtskheti, like the place of the Meschians. So yeah, take whichever one you want. When I say Meschian Turks, they're not really Turks. Like they're not real Turks. They're just Meschian Turks. What I mean is that they were Georgian people originally, but then they were Turkified, as one is, after eating too many kebabs. And they became Turkish peoples, so-called Turkish peoples. They're Meschian Turks, Meschian Georgians, Georgian Turks, whatever you want to call them. That's what they are. And they're still living around in some places down in Samtskhe-Javaketi. And they have really cool houses. Like their self-architecture is really cool. But I'm getting aside myself. That's for a different podcast, a different YouTube video. Anyway, so that's the creation theories of the town. So it's really, really old. And so when we're going back at the foundation of this, the life-giving pillar, We're talking about in the 200s, okay? And you have to remember that Georgia is actually the second country to become Christian. And it's part of this fact is why they orient themselves towards Europe a lot, because they're in like a sea of Islamic lands. There's just Georgia and Armenia right there, and they look kind of to Europe for their protection. That's a bit of the view here, and maybe the reality historically as well, because you had the Turks, you had the Persians, you had the Arabs, and you know, historically, traditionally, they were killing lots of Georgians. They had peace at times. They had the best of times and the worst of times together. But yeah, so Nino, she came up spreading Christianity from the Holy Land, and also her name. And I say that because like half the women in Georgia are named Nino, named after the saint. And she convinced the king, King Mirian, to become Christian. And with that, all his followers came. And so at Svetitskhoveli, one interesting thing had happened. Now we have to rely another 200 or 300 years when this guy Elias, he had come to Georgia from the Holy Land also. And it really is not that far of a jaunt. It's like, I don't know, if you're walking, maybe it's going to take you a couple weeks. By horseback, a little less, I guess. I've never taken it, but all you have Georgia, then you go through Armenia or Turkey, then you're already in Syria, and then you're in Lebanon, and then boom, you're in Israel or Judea or the province in the Roman Empire. And in fact, back in that time, there was even part of Georgia was in the Roman Empire as well. So there you go. It was all the same country. This was the garment that Jesus was wearing when he was crucified. And somehow this guy, Elias, got a hold of the garment. Now, this is not the shroud. That's something different. The shroud is what they wrap the dead body in, and they put it in the tomb. So this is what Jesus was wearing on the way to being enshrouded, and being crucified, in which after he was enshrouded. That was way too complicated of an explanation that I gave you, but there you go. Okay, so this guy got a hold of Jesus' garment, and then what happened after that was that Elias brought the garment back to Georgia, as you do, because he's Georgian, and he gave it to his sister, a girl named Sidonia, and she was so amazed by it, this garment, that she died, as you do. It was a really fashion disaster, I guess you could say. And so they buried her with the garment because they couldn't get it out of her hands. Like, she was clutching it so hard. She loved it. She was really into it. And and so they buried her right there. And then a tree grew on top of her body, which is often the case in stories. And so fast forward 200 years, back to Saint Nino, she saw this tree and she kind of intuited that's what happened. This tree was marking the spot. So she had the tree cut down, and I keep saying as you do, but it just seems naturally on some of these stories. So she had the tree cut down. She put it. They cut it into 5 pillars to make a church. But the 5th pillar was floating and oozing this liquid, and oozing out water, and they call it the life-giving pillar. And so they ended up calling the church itself the life-giving pillar. Svetitskhoveli in Georgian, the life-giving pillar. And that church, of course, doesn't exist anymore. It was just wood. And they rebuilt another church later. And then they rebuilt an even bigger church, which is the current church. That was in the 11th century. And we have a story about that, too. Like, so there's this author named Constantine Gamsakhoria. And he's famous because he's the father of the first president of Georgia, Gamsakhoria. They share a last name because they're family, in fact. Anyways, the father, he was on Constantine. He was a famous author. He was writing in Russian. He was writing in Georgian. He was writing all these languages. Brilliant guy. He I guess one day was pondering the church, and if you look up at the top of the church, maybe I've got a picture of it to show you. There's like a hand like this, and it's like holding a hammer. It's like the mason's hand. It's, I guess, a right hand, you can tell from the picture, because of the thumb, I suppose, and from the carving, not the picture. So a lot of people just kind of wondered, why is there a hand up there? And so the tradition goes is that after the mason built the church, the king loved it so much he chopped off his hand. Thanks, guy. Uh, that's not a very nice thing to do. But in other traditions, there's stories about like a king loving like a clock so much that he blinded the builder of the clock. So traditionally, like you would think architects would get smart enough not to build for kings, right? But they keep doing it, and they keep getting their hands chopped off or blinded or whatever. Yeah, that's not a good thinking, guys. Anyway, so Constantine Gamsakhordia, he was looking at this. He heard the legend, no doubt, and he's like, "Oh, that's kind of dumb. Why would the king chop off his arm? Why wouldn't he just blind him or something, as other kings do?" So he came up with a different story, in that they both loved this girl named Sharina, and they were both like, doing what kings and architects do with the ladies. And the king got jealous, and so he ended up chopping off Arsakidz's hand in a fit of jealous rage. I don't really remember what Sharina was doing. Like, she's not that big of a topic, I guess. It's just, about the men, as these things go. I mean, that's just how I'm remembering it. Maybe she was not that impressed by the King Georgi's actions regarding Arsakidze, but yeah, it is what it is. Men do what men do, chop off hands. So yeah. A little bit of background about King Georgi, though. He was kind of an important figure. I mean, his dad, I guess, was the more important figure. His dad was King Bagrat III, who united Georgia. And this project was really important for King Georgi because he wanted to give a big symbol of a unified Georgia. Like, all the provinces that were their own kingdoms before. You had, like, Kakheti, Kartli, Samagrelo, which is Kokheti, Hareti, and a couple others. And so he wanted to give a symbol of the united Georgia, and that's what Svetitskhoveli was, that symbol. And so he built it as that symbol. And yeah, so now that church remains today, though not maybe in its full intact form, because it's been through lots of invasions, lots of fires, lots of earthquakes, and you get a trend in Georgian architecture, the really old stuff, that you kind of see pieces are just kind of, they look a little mismatched and thrown together, and that's partly because they were just destroyed so many times and repaired and destroyed, repaired, broken down, repaired, and they were just kind of using whatever they could find to repair it. Like, they didn't always have the right parts in available, or sometimes the original parts were just completely destroyed and they had to put in some stand-in parts. So that's why you see kind of a patchwork in a lot of Georgian churches. Inside Svetitskhoveli, they have lots of brilliant murals. Like, most churches in Georgia historically were covered in murals, like really bright, colorful, beautiful murals. Many of them have faded over time. Some have been restored. But in Svetitskhoveli, so one thing that happened in this church and in other churches is that the Russians, when they came in and occupied Georgia the first time in the 1800s, they were like, what would make these churches look... Ivan, what would make these churches very nice is if we just cover it in white paint. Yes, yeah, bye. And so they just painted everything in white paint and then put up their own style icons, which are pictures and frames. And they thought that was really cool. And so when Tsar Nicholas I, he was going to come and visit Svetitskhoveli, they ran and quickly painted everything over in white so that he wouldn't be offended by the painted cathedral. But then he was like, no, I don't really want to visit. I got other things to do, and that's that. So later, afterwards, they've tried some restoration to remove a lot of that white paint, and you still see some of the older paintings. If you go to the forward and right, there's one on the apocalypse, the end of the world, with some zodiacs, and this was a 13th. It's like one of the only churches with zodiac symbols in it. That's what's big about it. It's from the 13th century. So these guys in the 1800s, they painted over a 13th century. That's like a 600-year-old paint. Yeah, 600-year-old painting. Like, what the heck, guys? Like, Yeah. So there's no better way to say that for Russians to say they respect the country than to just paint over all the beautiful heritage, um, yeah, with some clean white paint. So there's something interesting for you. The other deal is that yeah. So there you have yeah. That's Svetitskhoveli. I think I've just told you everything cool about it. But the last cool thing was that when they built it, supposedly they were also building a tunnel that went under the river and all the way up to Jvari Monastery to kind of escape whenever invaders came in. So now on to Jvari. On this trip last weekend, we actually didn't go to Svetitskhoveli, but I've been there lots of times, so I've got pictures of it and I can talk about it, and that's why I'm telling you about it now. And probably when you go with Georgians, that's where they'll take you. Maybe first, maybe second, probably first to Jvari, which Jvari is where we went. Now, Jvari is famous. Let's go back to Saint Nino again. Saint Nino, after she converted King Miriam, she wanted to proclaim this land for Christ. And as you do it, most people will stick a flag in something. So Christians, we stick crosses and things and proclaim them. That's what you do. And I guess Muslims, they stick crescents in things. But they probably use flags. Anyway, so Saint Nino, she went up the hill and stuck a cross in it. And there you go. And so all the people from all around Georgia, they came and was like, what is this? Why is this lady sticking a cross? Why did this lady stick a cross there? And I guess that was like the opportunity to give out some brochures and say, hey, can I talk to you about Jesus? Read this pamphlet, because that's how they did it back then, right? That's how people do it nowadays. I think Jehovah's Witnesses, for instance. Maybe it was the same back then. I don't know. I wasn't there. Were you there? You tell me in the comments. Do you know what was going on? Yeah, so that was a big thing. It drew a lot of tourists. This cross in the hill was drawing lots of tourists because it was like originally a pagan land, and now you have this big symbol here that it's not pagan anymore. Boom. So similar way, the tourists are still coming, not really for the cross, but for the building that they ended up building around the cross. So first they put one building. It wasn't big enough because too many tourists were coming in, pilgrims were coming in, and then they had to build a bigger church. And so they built a bigger one. And it's kind of a special kind of, it looks, when you look at it, it looks more kind of Byzantine looking. The format, it's like a tetrachon. Tetra, there's a special word for that. I think it's tetrachon, means like, yeah. Yeah, so it looks pretty Byzantine format, and you see that style kind of popping up in other churches built in that same period, though not very many examples remain, just one or two. Read the blog. I have all that written down in the blog better than I'm explaining it now because I'm just pulling it off the top of my head. Zwali Shwamto, and Manglisi, I believe, is the other church. And yeah, so there you go. You can see similar churches, two other similar churches still remaining in that style. Now, if you go inside, this is where it gets really unique, though, is where you go inside, there's this big earthen mound with a cross in it. And that earthen mound is the exact place where St. Nino put her original cross. Now, that cross itself is not original, obviously, because that would be a really old cross, which would be really cool. But yeah, it's not. They replace the cross whenever it needs replacing, as you do. And but yeah, so this is a very holy place. Both of those places are a very holy place for Georgians, obviously, because one represents a united Georgia, that's unoccupied Georgia, and the other one, is a representation of the founding of their faith, the Orthodox faith, Christianity faith in Georgia, in the 300s, way before most other people converted. Even before the Romans converted, I'd like to say that. But not before the Armenians. The Armenians were first, as they'd like to remind us. So, after that, we have Salobie. Now, Salobie is always, it's like the, if you have the Trinity, of the Holy Spirit, Christ, and God. So, obviously, you have the representations of, Yeah, that does the metaphor doesn't quite work right there. Yeah. So, anyways, you have beans. Salobie comes from the word lobio. Lobio means beans. Salobie means house of beans or place of beans. I prefer bean house, the bean house. And yeah, so they serve beans, and they serve beans in a clay pot. This is a Georgian tradition. They serve it in a clay pot with a bit of cornbread on top. We just call them chadi. And cornbread, of course, is not so traditional to Georgia. It goes back a couple hundred years. It's very dry, kind of like that. And I guess Georgians tell me they make it so dry because it's better to soak in the natural flavors of the beans. It's a true story. And okay. Yeah, I'm not a fan of the machadi. Like they have another cooler dish called Trilogy when they mix cheese into the cornbread. And that's really good. But for me, machadi, I grew up in the American South, and we got real cornbread down there. It's like full of that sweet corn, yummy goodness, soft and cakey and delicious. And like that's partly why a lot of Southerners are pretty fat and heavy is the cornbread. Never mind all the fried food too. But anyway, yeah. So Salobie, that's the third spot. A really good restaurant, really cheap. They still got like the old Georgian prices where you can like buy a beer for like 3 or 4 lari, and like beans are like 6 lari or something, super cheap. Everywhere in Tbilisi is charging like 40 lari for beans. No, I mean not that bad, like 30, 20, maybe 20 lari for beans. It's crazy, man. The prices are getting crazy. Anyway, yeah. So back to the Salobie. It's on the side of the highway, kind of leaving Mtskheta is really great to hit after you visit Mtskheta for those sites. And there's a couple other places in Mtskheta you can see too. Like there's a nunnery, a convent near Svetitskhoveli, and there's also a bridge that they say is made by Pompey from the Roman times. However, like most, I've also heard that it's just like a couple hundred years old. So maybe from the Roman times, maybe from modern times, but it is broken down and it looks old. But you'll notice that like a lot it's bad to say, a lot of buildings in Tbilisi are new and they just look really old because that's how they build them. Gives them character, I guess. And actually in Europe that happens too. Like people complain, oh, that building's so new, it looks so new, and I'm like, hey, give it a couple years, it'll look old. They'll get some cracks in it. That's true here, more so. Okay, anyway, that's all I've got for you this week. By the way, if you are in Tbilisi, I have some audio guides. So check out my audio guides. I'll post a link to them down below. Check those out. Check out the blog. Sign up for the newsletter so you don't miss an episode of the blog or this. And you can get some further insights, maybe what's going on. And yeah, so have a wonderful day. And thank you for watching my channel. Subscribe, like, all those likes, they help me out. So yeah, give a man some help. All right, have a wonderful day. Ciao.